Let's be frank, we enjoy gaming. Chances are, you probably do too. Why else would you have clicked on a video with a rather inflammatory claim about E3 long after the dust has settled on the 2019 iteration? Unless you're watching through someone else's window, in which case we won't tell if you won't. First, a little context. The Electronic Entertainment Expo, in case you hadn't heard, is the video game industry's biggest trade show, where the major publishers, developers, and console creators converge to show off their upcoming releases, announce new titles, and occasionally whip out their hardware specs. Starting in 1995, E3 was the industry's response to being unfairly ignored at CES and similar tech shows, who thought their toasters and vacuum cleaners were somehow more important than our beautiful gaming machines. But to hell with them, because the show has since blossomed from bar graphs and fiscal reports into a circus behemoth of grand spectacle and show-stopping moments. Good luck getting Keanu Reeves to promote your latest line of fridge freezers, CES! This may make it all sound like E3's going swimmingly, except it might not be. This year saw several big names pass up on presenting at E3 itself, most notably Sony, who didn't show up to the conference at all for the first time ever. EA tried to steal E3's thunder by very loudly hosting a show just before the main event. And Nintendo, well, they haven't been around since 2013, ever since they ditched presenting a conference for their direct streaming format, a more concise, pre-recorded showcase released alongside E3 with many others dotted throughout the year. And thus, we have the biggest threat to E3 yet: remote streams, aka the relentless march of technological progress, or the direct approach, as we've very cleverly called it. With streaming now an established part of the gaming landscape, developers have become comfortable with hosting their own official events to unveil a big announcement, or even just to tease new content for an existing game. And with this year's show another meh out of 10 performance, could this spell the end of E3? Okay, that's probably a little dramatic, and we should clarify, this video isn't going to be another one of those one-sided pieces on the matter. There'll be no witch hunts, no rigged juries, and we won't be planting a big bag marked illegal drugs in E3's locker. Think of this more of a medical checkup on what was, and still continues to be, the biggest gaming press convention of the year. And so for every pro E3 point we do, we'll also have a pro direct one too. Will our gaming equivalent of Christmas continue in the form of E3, or will the directs be directing the show? The only way to hash this out is with a reasonable, well-considered fight for the future of gaming. So come on E3, it's you versus directs and remote streams. Let's have a look at what's going on. Pro E3. All the hype in 1 week. Otherwise known as the Gamer's Christmas Defense. Both are hyper-commercialized times of the year, a week or so of overindulgence to the point where we couldn't possibly manage another game trailer, except then we help ourselves to another 3 anyway. And yet, it's hard to deny the excitement in the build-up to the main event. Even those with just a passing interest in games will have one eye on any E3 announcements before, during, and after the jolly video game jamboree. For game publishers and developers, they get to show off their hard work on the grandest stage of them all, sometimes literally on an actual stage. But for every awkward creative lead unsure of what to do with their hands, there's another who becomes an internet sensation overnight. For the press, having everything in one place is the height of convenience, and while it may just be a waking nightmare of lack of sleep combined with just too much to cover, regardless of whether you're physically there or not, it's still nice to get it all done in one lump. Plus, with developers and publishers vying for attention, there are numerous opportunities for exclusive reveals and interviews that can shine more light on certain releases and help inform us, the game-playing peons. Speaking of which, a neatly packaged E3 tag for all announcements helps fans get the lowdown on any titles they're excited to see, rather than trawl through news released sporadically throughout the year. The industry is undoubtedly powered by the hype machine, for better or worse, but at least E3 forces publishers to work for it, as they all dance for our attention and business, trying to convince us where to spend all of our hard-earned pocket change. Pro Direct. Anyone can stream announcements at their leisure. It's been the main argument over the last few years. Anyone can stream whenever, wherever, and however they please. So why do we still need E3? Even if it's a good idea to keep things neatly scheduled in a 1 or 2 week period, does anyone really need to be there? Nintendo were the first of the heavy hitters to adopt this approach for E3, having begun their Nintendo Direct streams in October 2011 and choosing to go the direct route for E3 in 2013 in place of their usual live show. EA, one of the world's biggest publishers, have been hosting a pre E3 party called EA Play since 2016, and with Sony skipping this year's show entirely, presumably too busy swimming in a large pool of God of War and Spider-Man money, E3 suddenly looks like the uncool mainstream corporate gig for sellouts and narcs, although really it's probably because they've just not got much to show off at the moment with the PS5 peeping around the corner. It's becoming clear that Sony, Nintendo and many others are starting to see through the "you must be here to be relevant" smoke and mirrors of E3, choosing instead to set their own news cycle by announcing things when they're good and ready. Even smaller publishers like Devolver Digital have started mocking E3 with their own parody press conference that grows more insane with each passing year. The knock-on effect of going direct means less chance of messing anything up, which is bad news for cringe compilation experts, but ideal for the devs who are so often forced into the limelight for awkward presentations and in front of stupid, constantly disruptive crowds. Will you shut up? It also means more time to show what really matters, the games themselves. More trailers, more gameplay and more reveals means more happy people. In fact, sometimes it's nice to space out opening your metaphorical birthday presents across your metaphorical birthday rather than opening them all in 1 minute. Plus, the fact that many have proclaimed Nintendo as the winners of E3 in a pretty mediocre year with their well-packaged, pre-recorded presentation doesn't bode well for the traditional E3 stage. Pro E3. It's more than just conferences! From the outside looking in, the spotlight has always been on the main conferences, a medley of dance troupes, orchestral performances, laser light shows, and the occasional video game too when there's time. But technically, all these pomp-stuffed conferences occur before E3 itself, before the trade show floor is opened up to hordes of press, fans, and industry reps. That's around 66,000 people as of 2019, and this is where the real work gets done. The timeliness of E3 has traditionally benefited retailers who can enjoy a good 5 to 6 month lead time between the gaming Christmas and actual Christmas to plan their stock around the top hits of that year. And despite plenty of industry shows including Paris Games Week, Tokyo Game Show, and Gamescom appearing over the past 25 years, E3 still commands a certain presence that seems impossible to match. Journalists, influencers, and now fans can go hands-on with a vast array of upcoming games, along with attending exclusive reveals, demos, and showcases that will provide a steady drip feed of tasty, nutritious deets over the following weeks. Of course, it's still a very controlled environment. Most of the time you're seeing what the publishers want you to see, but there are benefits to this boots-on-the-ground approach. The idea of serious video game journalism may still be a hard idea for your grandma to wrap her head around, but physically attending the show itself allows these super sleuths to uncover all manner of super scoops, way more than they would from watching a direct stream from home. During the long, frantic days of E3 with a packed schedule, even veteran spokesmen or spokeswomen can be easily caught out, revealing something that ultimately gives consumers a clearer, more honest representation of a particular game. Take last year's Fallout 76, for example, and the warning signs that began to emerge in interviews with only the slightest prods shortly after the glossy first reveal. Plus, these events help the press gain industry contacts and develop relationships, which means better future coverage, and that can't be a bad thing, can it? But does this justify the conference themselves, which quickly devolve into a snark fest where snap judgments rule and critics don't even get a chance to playtest and provide their professional thoughts before the hate hammer comes down from on high? Additionally, aside from sleep deprivation and game trailer apathy, what's the real cost? Pro Direct. E3 is too bloated and expensive. Accurate running costs for E3 are understandably tricky to find. A show floor booth can range from $100,000 if you're as frugal as semi-formal studios were in 2013, to between $5 and $10 million if you were to host a Microsoft rivaling Blockbuster, and that is 2006 era pricing, by the way. That's a lot of money for something that could be presented in a stark white studio with all the production values a pre-recorded format bestows, and it all contributes to a rather bloated event. We understand that even this slick, modern, consumer-friendly E3 still functions as a trade show designed to impress retailers and investors alike, and the show floor still has its place for live demos and giant mascot costumes, I suppose, but think of the possibilities without the major players is throwing away silly conference money. Console manufacturers like Sony, Nintendo, and Microsoft could invest more in first-party titles, promising studios, and maybe, if they're feeling generous, help combat major industry issues like crunch culture or the emerging issues of gaming addiction and self-regulation. Of course, these are companies we're talking about here, so we wouldn't be surprised if they simply pocketed the cash, but you never know. What's far more likely is that as E3 is essentially one massive marketing stunt, the unspent capital could be directed into producing the world's most amazing directs with explosions and jet flybys and actual aliens. Maybe. The big three pulling out might also prove beneficial in reshaping the structure of E3 itself, providing a space that could be filled with indie devs, esports, and PC gaming, all of which have traditionally lacked a major presence at the show, and need the platform E3 provides far more than the console giants. Do you really think Police Stories can compete with Keanu or Bam Bam? Come on. Pro E3. Surely competition breeds creativity? Every year, the question, who won E3, floods the internet, where purveyors of such insightful thoughts host lively debates by yelling in all caps and making liberal use of the naughty F word. That's fanboys, by the way. The importance of winning what is essentially a trade show event should prove to you that competition is as fierce as it has ever been. The contest between rival console manufacturers is a perpetual battle, but it all comes to a head during one busy week in June, and the gaming industry thrives on this competition. Without E3, we wouldn't have had such iconic moments like Sony's $299 mic drop or the 3 simultaneous console reveals of 2005. Sometimes it also prompts some unlikely partnerships, as when Nintendo legend Shigeru Miyamoto joined Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot to announce the impossible-sounding Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle, or everyone's gobsmacked reaction to Gabe the PlayStation 3 is a waste of time Newell announcing an exclusive Portal 2 partnership with PlayStation for PlayStation 3 at the PlayStation conference. These bombshell announcements and moments could just have easily become just another regular trailer showcase were it not for companies upping their game for E3. Granted, we've also seen our fair share of cringeworthy moments like Mr. Caffeine, Giant Enemy Crabs, and Konami's just Konami in general, to be honest. But they're only here because the gods of E3 know we need something to laugh at, because life is hard. It's definitely not because of a rushed planning process brought on by a completely arbitrary deadline, though. Right? Pro Direct. Arbitrary deadlines causing developer crunch. Since the early days of game development, there's been an unnatural obsession with crunch times, whereby dev staff work an excessive amount of overtime, usually unpaid, in order to make sure a project meets a deadline. This unsustainable, unhealthy practice has gained a lot of publicity over the years, especially since an expose in 2004 slammed EA's enforced crunch culture. But even 15 years later, this is somehow still an accepted part of game development. Poor management and unrealistic deadlines are just a couple of catalysts for this toxic approach, but it's not just release dates that pile the pressure on. When it comes to E3, the year's biggest chance to impress the gaming media and the general public, it's of vital importance to finish off that working slice of your new project. There are numerous stories about developers crunching just to build fake demos that would almost always just get thrown away afterwards, from niche MMO Hero's Journey to the mega-budgeted BioShock Infinite and God of War and Anthem. Heaven forbid you show up empty-handed and, dare we say it, lose E3? Well, better get cracking on those 12-hour-plus days, except it doesn't have to be like this. Nintendo have spoken at length about their aims to cut out crunch by being more flexible, increasing headcount, and not being afraid to push back release dates. This year's Animal Crossing and the perpetually delayed Metroid Prime 4 being major examples. And they're not the only ones tackling the crunch crisis. E3 has become a self-imposed calendar event, but should larger developers decide to be more flexible about when to reveal their games, they can dictate their own release date, not overwork their staff to the extent that half of them are signed off with stress, EA and BioWare, and, to paraphrase Mr. Miyamoto, end up with a delayed game that's eventually good, rather than a rushed game that's forever bad. If more big names switch to a direct style approach to announcements, whether they coincide with E3 week or follow their own schedule, then it won't fix everything overnight, but maybe, just maybe, it might kickstart a journey down a less harsh path and produce a better end result for everyone involved. Pro E3. E3 is available to everyone now. Okay, so maybe this aging E3 format needs a shake-up, but it's not for lack of trying. In 2017, the show opened its doors to regular civilians for the first time ever, with an allotment of 15,000 tickets priced at around $250, the cost of your average music festival. It's a nice gesture and acknowledges the show's evolution into more of a fan convention. This means that anyone, providing they can cover the cost of entry, can take part in the gaming festivities, and is all the more reason for big companies to continue to attend. Yes, of course you want journalists to cover your game, but to what end? To have these people, who are now able to attend, eventually buy your product. This way, you can do both. You can get journalists to cover your game and get it into the hands of the exact people you'll come to rely on to purchase and support it in the coming year or so. Plus, they'll probably tell a friend or two, driving even more sales. It's a win-win and a pivotal reason for E3 to stick around long into the future. Pro Direct. Streams have always been available to anyone. So people with lots of disposable cash can now go to LA for a video game holiday. Great news for them. But if you do find yourself at the event arguing with a staff member about why the color of your badge means you're not allowed into the must-see Ubisoft conference, you might just stop and think, if I can't get into this, then why bother coming at all? Why not go to PAX or EGX or Gamescom to play the latest games? Millions of viewers can potentially tune in and watch the conferences at their leisure, either live or after the fact, without so much as a Blue Peter badge to prove they belong. And as it stands currently, with both E3 and Directs coexisting, the extra attendees who do buy tickets are often filming their own vlogs and live streaming updates as the event unfolds, which was once the domain of a few privileged media outlets, meaning the home viewer is spoilt for choice when it comes to coverage anyway, just so long as you don't start streaming from a bathroom like a colossal moron. But that extra coverage still requires someone to actually go to the show, so maybe, just maybe, there's something to be said for doing both, as Nintendo do. They have their Direct stream, but are also present on the show floor. E3 and Directs might be able to coexist, at least for now. Like so many things in life, this essentially boils down to tradition versus innovation. The games industry has always been laser-focused on the future, with many publishers gladly changing tact if it means getting a leg up on the competition. Google doesn't care about your precious collection of old CDs and cartridges, because game streaming is obviously the future, and if you could do that with them, they'd very much appreciate it, thank you. And video streaming has been so commonplace in the last 10 years, many of us use YouTube and Twitch as the first port of call for entertainment and information anyway. E3 is a stalwart of traditional video game media, but traditional media has been fighting a losing battle for years. For a show that puts so much emphasis on graphical upgrades, hardware advances, and the next shiny new thing, it's sadly ironic that the format itself could be left behind by the same forward thinking that made it relevant in the first place. And so the age of the Directs looks to be upon us, an age where each company hosts their own event, on their own terms, at their own leisure, delivered straight to the consumer, cutting out the unnecessary bloat of the traditional E3 conference. But we don't think this is the quote-unquote end of E3 as such, certainly not for a few years at least. There'll never be anything in a Direct stream that captures the bombastic ludicrousness of a PlayStation conference starting with a live orchestra concert, and nothing beats getting hands-on with a new game. Regardless of whether you're press or just a fan, the coverage either way is invaluable for publishers. Maybe the hands-on aspect of the show floor continues to exist, but the big players switch to remote Direct streams during that week instead. Maybe it all gets scrapped. The switch is made to Direct entirely, and they're scattered throughout the year. Maybe companies will hold their own conventions and have conferences there, as PlayStation have done with PSX and Bethesda do with QuakeCon. Or maybe we'll continue to get the weird hybrid we have now, at least for the foreseeable future. Never discount the big EEE and the temptation for companies to make fools of themselves on a grand stage. So, is E3 dead? Well, not quite. Its age is showing, however, and it might need a new hip replacement or fancy bionic arm to keep up with the rapidly changing landscape of video game media, but what do you think? What do you prefer? The madness of E3 or the sporadic but jam-packed, slickly produced Directs? Let us know in the comments below. You can follow myself and TripleJump on Twitter here, and while you're at it, why not support the things you enjoy by having a look at our Patreon? Finally, don't forget to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. I'm Ben from TripleJump, and thanks for watching.